The purpose of these lessons is to show you the logic behind the most basic Chinese characters, beginning with the simplest pictograms, and later combining these elements to create more complex characters. Today's lesson includes 9 characters, 7 of which refer to speaking, plus 2 new numbers. Our first character is a pictogram of a mouth blowing a musical instrument, resembling a flute or a horn. Pronounced first tone, yin, yin, meaning sound, voice, or musical tone. The red mouth with a line inside indicates the instrument is held in the mouth. The phrase for a speaker's accent is kou yin, literally mouth sound. And if that individual has a heavy, hard-to-understand accent, we can say 他的口音好重. An echo is a sound reflected back to us, so the Chinese is 回音, which can also refer to a person's response to a message or inquiry. The second character in today's lesson is a variation on the first one. Notice that it's simpler in appearance and refers only to the sound from our mouth, without using the instrument and thus missing the line inside. It means speech, words, or as a verb, to speak, and is pronounced second tone. Yin, yin. It's a phonosemantic character with its double, yin, serving as the pronunciation clue. If you happen to make an embarrassing or indiscreet remark, you could use 失言 to describe the situation, where you literally lose control of your speech. When a person speaks straight from the heart, candidly or bluntly, the expression 直言 would apply, either as a verb or as a noun referring to the outspoken remarks themselves. In most cultures, a person's word is their bond, and a promise, once made, should not be broken. This provides us with another 4-character fixed idiom, 言出如山. Literally, words spoken are like a mountain. This expression can be a warning to someone as a promise is being made, or reproaching a person afterward if they've broken their word. Our third character is a simple combination of a person next to his mouth, which later became the speech component, with the implication that a person has spoken, and therefore his words should be believed and trusted. It's pronounced fourth tone, xin, xin. As with yin, society expects that we should be responsible for the words we utter. If we've gone back on our word, the Chinese expression is 失信, meaning we've lost our trustworthiness. A person who is as good as their word would be described as 言而有信, literally, to speak and have truthfulness. For example, I could say, 我大哥是一个言而有信的人. My big brother can be counted on to do what he's agreed to do. Trust is based on reciprocity, so the most common phrase in Mandarin to express belief or trust is 相信, literally, mutual trust. A simple affirmative plus negative question is, do you believe it? Can you believe it? 你信不信? This is a perfectly acceptable reduction of the full sentence, 你相信不相信, which can drop 问信, 你相不相信, or eliminate both 相, 你信不信? All 3 versions are found in everyday conversations. Since the character 信 shows a person and his or her words, it can also simply mean their letters or correspondence, as in the expression 书信. I've mentioned before that 书 refers not only to books but any written material, and even the act of writing itself. Once a letter has been written, it's put into an envelope, 信封, literally, a letter seal. The character feng from lesson 10 is also the measure word for letters, so a letter is 一封信, not 一个信. 我回了他一封信. I sent a reply to his letter. Literally, I returned him one letter. The phrase to mail or post a letter is 寄信. Literally, to entrust the letter to the post office, of course. With 信, we can make a new fixed idiom. 信口开河, literally, to let your mouth flow like a river, meaning to speak without thinking, make irresponsible remarks, or less charitably, to shoot off your mouth. 直言可以, 可是不要信口开河. Speaking bluntly and to the point is all right, but don't go making irresponsible remarks. In these lessons, we've already introduced the numbers 1, 2, and 3, because they're merely groups of lines. So now we can start learning other numbers that no longer look so simple. We'll start with that dreaded number 4, which at one time was simply 4 horizontal lines, just like 1, 2, and 3. For some unknown reason, the 4-line version was replaced by a pictogram of 2 nostrils, originally meaning to breathe. Pronounced fourth tone, 四, 四. I just called 4 that dreaded number because 四 sounds almost like the character for death, pronounced third tone, 死, which we'll talk about in a future lesson. Anyway, superstitious English speakers have an aversion to the number 13, and Chinese speakers fear the number 4. So much so, in fact, that police and emergency vehicle license plates never include it. And hospitals and many office and residential buildings simply skip their 4th floor altogether, calling it the 5th floor instead. Other than that, 4 is just another number, with April being the 4th month, 4月. With the numbers 3 and 4, we can learn another fixed expression, 不三不四, literally, neither 3 nor 4, generally referring to unsavory individuals you'd be better off not associating with, or to something totally incongruous and out of place, such as a beautiful house in a dirty slum. There are some good references, including the number 4, particularly 四书, the 4 books in classical Chinese literature, namely The Doctrine of the Mean, the Confucian Analects, The Great Learning, and Mencius. In secondary school, passages from the Confucian Analects are required reading in the classical language and are often memorized. The other 3 books are touched upon, but not seriously studied. These books are, after all, written in the monosyllabic classical language, which requires plenty of footnotes to be understood by modern Chinese speakers, somewhat akin to English speakers reading that old English folk epic, Beowulf. Our next number is 5. Once a collection of horizontal lines like the others, but then reduced to what looks like a Roman numeral 10, or capital X. 5 is pronounced third tone, 五, 五. And the month of May is 五月. More important to us today is a combination of 5 as phonetic with the mouth radical. It's an ancient character for the first-person pronouns and adjectives. I, we, and my, our, pronounced second tone, 吾, yu, or ya. An example would be the patriotic usage of 吴国, our country, in the national anthem. In modern Mandarin, this character serves basically as a phonetic for other characters, such as the following one, with a speech radical. pronounced third tone, yu, yu, and generally translated as language. In English, when a teacher says, "I want to speak to you after class," you get the feeling that you're in for a dressing down, on the receiving end of criticism, because no one dares to interrupt a speech. On the other hand, a clever teacher might say, "I want to talk to you after class," making you feel less intimidated, because talking means interactive communication. She talks, and you do too. That's more or less the difference between the Chinese characters yin and yu. Yin is more about speaking to someone, whereas yu refers more appropriately to replying to a question or having a conversation. Look at the characters. Yin is a mouth plus instrument. Here, instrument being the words you project. Yu has the I-we phonetic, stressing the interactive nature of the communication between you and me. Yin and yu are found together in this fixed expression, 不言不语, meaning to not say a word, as in this example, 她不言不语地看了我好久. She just stood there and looked at me without uttering a word. Notice the implication of language as a communicative exchange in the following phrases. 语言, language or speech. 日语, Japanese, the spoken language. 外语, foreign languages. 手语, sign language for the deaf. 口语, colloquial rather than formal speech. And finally, 成语, a fixed idiom or set phrase, usually of the 4-character type. The 8th character in today's lesson is a pictogram of a forked tongue, now used to refer to any tongue, animal or human. It's pronounced second tone, 蛇, 蛇, just like snake in lesson 16. A common expression using this tongue character is 口舌, literally mouth and tongue, meaning quarrels, disputes, and a second usage meaning to do a lot of talking to convince someone and possibly wasting your breath in the process. Our 9th and final character is composed of the speech radical plus an odd-looking device held in the mouth to aid in hooking an arrow onto a bowstring. What that's called in English, I have no idea, and all internet translators for the Chinese character come up blank. Anyway, this device is the phonetic for today's character pronounced 4th tone, 话, 话, which also means to say, speak, or talk, and as a noun, sayings and expressions. Over the centuries, this device became hopelessly confused with the character for tongue, resulting in the same modern character having 2 totally different interpretations and pronunciations. Tongue is pronounced 舌, while the bowstring phonetic lends itself to 3 pronunciations when combined with other characters, either 火, 括, or 瓜, g, g, k, k, and h, h. By the way, are all pronounced at the back of the mouth, and thus are phonetically related. We'll see more examples of this phonetic in future lessons. Our first example is 白话, meaning spoken Chinese, as opposed to classical Chinese. The May 4th movement in 1919 is when spoken Mandarin was adopted as the written standard, to replace the sometimes dense classical language used in written documents at the time. This is somewhat akin to Latin, being the written form for most scientific, legal, and scholarly writings in the West for hundreds of years, while spoken languages were considered too vulgar to bother putting into print. Everybody studied Latin, but nobody actually spoke it. 土话 is the general classification for any regional dialect. 闲话 means idle talk or gossip, and can be used after a short digression, saying, for example, 闲话太多, before bringing the discussion back to the matter at hand. Even more useful is the next phrase meaning to make a phone call, 打电话. I said in the last lesson that 打 is a catch-all verb found in many idioms. And finally, to return a phone call would be 回我电话 or 回他电话. Here is our color chart with today's 9 characters. 音 言 信 语 武 舌 话 四 and 鱼. So, what's the takeaway from today's lesson? 1. The character for producing music or speech is 音, a pictogram of a mouth blowing a horn or trumpet. A person's accent is 口音, which can be described as heavy or light, just as in English. A reflected sound or echo is 回音, which can also be a response to an inquiry. 2. 言 is a variant of 音, simpler in form, and a new radical, the speech radical. 失言 describes an embarrassing or indiscreet remark, and 直言 refers to direct, blunt, or outspoken remarks. 3. As is true in most human societies, a person's word is their bond. So the 4-character expression, or 成语, 言出如山, reminds us of the importance of keeping one's promises. 4. The person radical combines with a speech component in the character 信, emphasizing once again that a person's words should not be spoken lightly, so that they will be trusted and believed. 相信 is the verb to believe or to trust, implying that the trust must be mutual. 失信 means a person has lost that trust because they've broken their word. The idiom 言而有信 refers to an individual who can always be depended on, who is trustworthy. 5. 书信 refers to letters and correspondence. 信封 is the envelope in which they are placed, and 寄信 means to mail or post them. The new measure word for letters is 封, as in 一封信, a letter. 6. The expression for making irresponsible comments or blurting out whatever pops into one's head is 信口开河. 7. The number 4, 四, is considered unlucky, much like number 13 in English. It's a near but not exact homophone of the character for death, pronounced with a different tone. For obvious reasons, Chinese people avoid 四 whenever possible in the numbering of floors and buildings, the license plates of police, ambulance, and fire department vehicles. A new set expression describing a shady individual of rather dubious morals is 一个不三不四的人. This 4-character phrase can also describe something incongruous, out of place, ill-matched to its surroundings. 8. Some good references, including the number 4, are April, 四月, and 四书, the 4 books of classical Chinese literature. Passages from the Analects of Confucius are required reading in schools. 9. Once a group of 5 horizontal lines, the number 5 was reduced to 2 horizontal lines with an X between. The month of May is 5月. More important, though, is the number 5 combined with a mouth radical, creating the ancient first-person pronouns and adjectives, I, my, and we, our, which can also serve as a phonetic in other characters. 10. The speech radical combined with the phonetic yu gives the character yu, meaning language. The fixed idiom, to utter not a word, 不言不语, hints at the difference between yu and yen, and a quick glance at the characters themselves clearly reveals it, which is why etymology is a valuable tool when learning Chinese. Yen tends to mean directing your speech to a person, while yu is more along the lines of replying to a question or having a conversation. 11. Yu indicates everyday spoken language, especially the phrase 口语, which distinguishes the colloquial from the written form of the language. A 成语 is a fixed idiom or saying, sometimes derived from history or ancient literature, and sometimes simply created using numbers, such as 不三不四 in today's lesson. 12. The tongue radical 舌 and the phonetic pronounced 瓜 are identical in modern script, but have entirely different origins and meanings. The speech radical 言 combines with 瓜 to form the character 话, meaning as a verb, to speak or talk, and as a noun, expressions and sayings. 白话, literally, clear talk, refers to the vernacular language as opposed to classical Chinese. It was adopted as the written standard after the May 4th movement in 1919. Expressions with 话 include 闲话, meaning idle talk or chit-chat, and 电话, meaning telephone. To make a phone call is 打电话, and to return a call, 回电话. Now you will find a short quiz on double, triple character, and longer expressions. Answer using only the characters learned so far. Thank you for watching and listening.